'Cause it is my guilt, I claim you, grievous miracle. Make my chest hurt with regret. Forge your punishment and nail it deep. Shape my guilt once again.
Disease and famine run rampant in the world of Blasphemous. It takes place in a medieval time period where people are overcome with religion. You play as the Penitent One, a religious warrior who wears a cone-shaped mask with a crown of thorns built into it. You attack and dodge your way through a diverse assortment of disgusting enemies in gorgeous landscapes. The first cutscene explains the backstory pretty well, but the game takes a very mysterious approach to storytelling through the use of item descriptions. The first character you meet goes by the name of Deo Gracias. He pops up throughout the playthrough, giving us information and cluing us into our overall goals. He also tells us about the Grievous Miracle, a religious phenomenon in this dark world that has affected everyone who lives there. The only task he gives us at the start is to find a crown in a church somewhere to open some doors. Not a lot to go off of, but I like the mystery and not having stuff over-explained. I will be honest in saying that I did not read the item descriptions to gain understanding of the deeper lore, as I was more focused on not getting my ass kicked by the combat and platforming. Wait, can I parry you? Hold on. Oh no! As a disclaimer, I've never beaten a 2D platformer before, so take everything I say in this section with a grain of salt. Platforming was the hardest part of the game for me by far. There were so many times where I would rage quit because I failed a jump and landed in spikes and had to fight through the entire level again just to fail the jump again or die to an enemy that I had killed before and then realized that the checkpoint was 2 rooms ago that I missed because I took the door on the left and not the right, so then I got, alright, I'll stop. In reality, the platforming challenged me a lot and it made me have to think of solutions on the spot. I enjoyed executing some of the platforming in places like the peaks. In this area, you straight up can't make some of the jumps. That is until you realize that the wind that has been trying to push you off of ledges can be used to make those jumps if you time it with the wind at your back. Another cool idea was the bells in John Doe that you have to time your jumps against in order to not get hit. One of my least favorite areas was the library, where you have to dodge book throwing enemies and ghosts at the same time. The platforming was very hard to grasp at first, and with someone with almost zero experience in the genre, it took me a long time to get the hang of it. Level design is done extremely well in this game. There are all these different distinct pathways that either lead to items or keep you on the main progression route. There are tons of secret rooms that you can find by accident that make you start checking every nook and cranny of the map. Now, by far my favorite aspect of the map and level design is the interconnectivity. It reminds me a lot of Dark Souls 1, and how you'll be just minding your business and then discover a massive elevator that brings you all the way back to the first area of the game.
Whoa, oh.
Another cool addition is the fast travel mechanics. You have to find all the different fast travel locations, but once you do, it helps with quests and backtracking. Now to touch on something I don't like, I wish the game would have given important progression items like flasks and relics on the main paths or near bosses. Towards the end of the game, I was severely underleveled because I either didn't have the correct items or I didn't know how I could upgrade them. And that leads me to my next gripe, upgrading your character. Since I went into this game pretty much fully blind, I had no idea how any of the upgrade mechanics worked. I missed so many upgrade items that towards the end of the game I still had the base amount of 3 healing flasks. Now I will say I think I probably grabbed maybe 1 or 2 of the empty flasks early on and just didn't know what they did, but I also think the way that you upgrade flasks is confusing. You have to go to a certain blood fountain thing, but the problem is I found one early on in the graveyard of the peaks and all it did was heal my health and fill my flasks. Nowhere did it say that it could give the player more flasks. Now I do understand that this game takes a no hand-holding approach to gameplay, but not telling me how to upgrade the amount of flasks I have just led to a lot of boring backtracking later on. There were some more small things, like how if you don't go to literally every single room and do every quest, then you probably won't have the best abilities, but honestly I did just fine without any crazy abilities. I upgraded my sword at the different shrines and found most of the Lady of the Six Sorrows locations, which grant you an increase to your max health, which I felt was a lot more important. Besides, once I did the backtracking and maybe a little bit of googling on where to get the flask upgrade pieces, then the game was a lot more manageable. The combat in Blasphemous is very smooth. There are tons of different ways to attack and different moves you can unlock. You can spam attack for an easy 4-hit combo, or you can unlock a spin attack that requires you to hold down after your 3rd hit, but it does way more damage. More of my favorites are the parry, which feels very satisfying to pull off, and also the thrust attack, where you attack while dodging and do a quick lunge that does huge damage. Speaking of dodging, it feels so smooth in this game. Your character does this clean slide animation that never gets old, but as good as it feels, it does have some problems. Your invincibility frames are very strange in this game. You can't slide through enemies unless they're attacking. You also can't slide through most of the projectiles in the game, so you have to use it more of a dodge in the literal sense by sliding away from stuff instead of through it. That's not inherently bad, but it can definitely feel clunky, and there were different moments where I was wondering why I couldn't slide through an attack. Another annoying thing combat-wise is the hitboxes on attacks. They can be pretty bad sometimes. You can think you jumped over something to still be hit by it, and then sometimes projectiles will just hit you for no reason, but I only really noticed it towards the end of the game. There are probably a lot more combat mechanics I missed, and therefore didn't get to try out, but the beauty of the combat is getting into a rhythm of dodging and hitting while also making sure to use your special abilities at the right time. Combat comes to a peak in the boss fights. A lot of the major fights require perfect timing on your dodges mixed with attacking in small openings. There's also not a lot of time to heal during these fights, so you're required to figure out the best chances through trial and error. Some of the fights have multiple phases to them, where the boss changes its patterns and becomes stronger. To overcome these challenges, you have to learn every attack and either punish or escape depending on what the attack does. Unfortunately, not all the boss fights are like this. There are quite a few gimmicky fights that don't do a whole lot for me. As I said before, the most fun I had was getting into a rhythm, and when a boss spams you with projectiles, it turns into more of a dodge and wait type fight, which isn't my favorite. The use of platforming in boss fights was used occasionally, but I wish it was used more. Some of the more forgettable fights for me were just running side to side dodging stuff until you get your opening. Giving the player more platforms and rewarding executing tricky jumps in the form of attack windows could have been interesting. I'd say bosses were a high point overall, but some could have been fleshed out into a more enjoyable experience. If there's one thing I can't praise enough about Blasphemous, it's the visuals. God damn does this game look good. It might not seem like much at first, but the levels and background have so many details to them and all feel so different and unique from each other. I've never seen pixel art look this good, and I can't even imagine the work put into this game. They nailed the religious theme so well and made the world feel alive. Every character has an impressive design that fits right in with everything else that you see. Half the fun of Blasphemous is just exploring the different areas to see what the amazing art direction does next. To wrap all this up, if you can look past its faults, I'd recommend Blasphemous to people who enjoy exploring gorgeous landscapes and areas, collecting items, and learning about the disturbing but interesting story as you play. It's also great for anyone who is okay with failure and loves the feeling you get when you overcome a challenge.